So I want to start out by saying thank you to everyone who has been involved in the Play Studio National, and that starts with our jurors. We have Lauren Sandler, Sana Musasama, and Kukuli Velarde, who are our honored jurors. And all of you, as people who are seeing the exhibition and looking at it, are important members of the community. The artists who both applied for the show. We had over 400 objects to look at when we were jurying. And then we have about 70 artists who are in the exhibition, whether they are invited, juried, or part of the jury team. And we did get a shout out in today's Metro newspaper in the Philadelphia area, if you have a chance to check that out. We are, again, bringing you these free programs on Thursdays, and I will humbly remind you that if you would like to make a donation, I'm happy to put the link to that in our chat a little bit later on. We are working really hard to make sure that we continue to provide programming for our community to bring everyone together, and we're working as hard or harder than ever. So we're really proud of our staff and thankful that we have a chance to continue to serve our community. So thanks for that, all of you. We are going to start out. I just realized that I have to come out of the share for 1 second. I'm sorry about this. As I share with you the bio of our first artist who is going to be speaking with you today, and that is Dasha Kalisz. She is one of our juried artists, as I mentioned. And I had her bio open and now I just need to find it. So sorry, everybody, bear with me for a sec. There we go. Dasha Kalisz was born in 1979 in Vermont, where she currently lives and works. Kalisz creates her clay sculptures by altering wheel-thrown forms and applying traditional and non-traditional ceramic surface methods. She pairs biomorphic abstract ceramic forms with found objects to explore emotionality. In the spring of 2020, Kalisz earned her MFA from the Maine College of Art. She graduated from Burlington College with a BA focused in ceramics and art history. Kalisz traveled extensively throughout the United States, Oaxaca, Mexico, and Europe, where she investigated ceramic cultures and participated in a residency at La Miadriana International School for Ceramics. Kalisz belongs to the Brandon Artist Guild and has recently exhibited at the Paper and Clay Show in Lagan, Utah. Kalisz is a public school arts educator dedicated to cultivating creativity. Thank you for being with us today, Dasha. And here are your images. Back to the share screen.
Right, great. Thank you so much. I'm just gonna set my timer. So thank you, Jennifer, and thank you to the jury members. I really appreciate you choosing my work. I feel very honored to be a part of the selection. There are so many amazing works here. So I just want to talk about the work that is in the show. This is called Lung Pump. It's porcelain with lava glaze and a catheter condom that holds together a toilet bowl with the work. So Lung and Pump was created a part of a series of work that I was making. I was interested in creating these parodies of what would be a lung, how to take away part of the lung, but still kind of like reference the lung. And working with this idea of the parodies, I also was thinking about like substituting it, but also thinking about the function of the lung and what does the lung do. So this is a piece, it's again, lava glaze. Of course, we breathe out air. If we could go back to the first slide, Jennifer. Mm-hmm. So these parodies, I was really interested in kind of connecting these organic materials, which is seen in the clay and the glaze. These organic materials connected with this like faculty, excuse me, factory-made products. And I think that these pairings kind of reveal the liminal space of human biology and the mechanical mechanisms. And within this connection and this reveal, it also points to the possibility of failure and the vulnerability of humans. So if you could go to slide 3, sorry. Thank you. So these two pieces, the one on the left is called Pulmonary. And this is really about exploring, like, what does the failed lung look like? I was using images of skin disease to like psoriasis and shingles to kind of like imply this disease and the collapsing of the lung to show it's not functioning. And the piece to the right-hand side is just kind of like a specimen from your lab that the lung it's called ooze. And so the lung is just kind of collapsing. I began like this idea of this like research and investigation of the lung because my father passed away of COPD. And we could go to actually the last slide. And I was in the hospital. I was lucky to be in the hospital with him when he passed away, but that also really resonated with me, with him being hooked up to machinery to help him breathe, because COPD is a chronic lung disease, if you don't know that, just to let you know. So being with him just like really resonated to me about the vulnerability of the body, and the idea of like letting go and how hard that is to let go. And we have these, and those science is really helpful to keep us alive. Like, what does that mean to continue a life? And I think this work really resonates, even though it's very like personal, especially now. I think it resonates with other people with COVID and what's happening now that we see our doctors and nurses with plastic bags around them with duct tape to keep being safe. And it's just an interesting kind of juxtaposition of organic and synthetic, and the idea of humanity. So, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dasha. That was really wonderful. And the organic and the man-made, but also sort of high-tech and low-tech, this idea of incredibly high-tech medical things that we're dealing with, and then using duct tape as the final thing to try to keep people safe. And I don't think I don't need to say it out loud, but I will anyway, that of course within our very timely situation, this exploration of lungs is really powerful, and your use of ceramics and glaze to invoke these different features is really well executed. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
And if anyone has questions for Dasha or anyone else, you can put them in the chat, and we're going to be going back to questions at the end of our time today. So I think it's a great opportunity to juxtapose the idea that we have juried artists who are have applied to the Clay Studio National, because we want to be the point of the exhibition, and it's a biannual show. This is the 5th iteration, is to show the depth and breadth of what's happening in the ceramic art world in the United States at this moment. And there's just so many different ways, as we all know, to use clay. We want to make sure that we use the Clay Studios exhibitions as a platform to show the rest of the world just the incredible dynamic flexibility of our chosen art material. So thanks again, Dasha. We are going to go to Kukuli next, and I would like to share with you her bio. Kukuli Velarde was born in Cusco, Peru, to an anthropologist mother and a father who held high expectations for her. At a young age, Velarde started to express herself through art, particularly painting, even getting to the point of being recognized as a sensation because of her advanced skills. Though recognized as a talented painter, Velarde felt pressure to continue doing art, which led her to have a falling out with her first chosen craft. So later on, Velarde lived in Mexico, attended the Academy of San Carlos in Mexico City, and then she came to the United States in 1988, where she received her Bachelor of Arts from Hunter College in New York, where she found clay. I think she'll tell us about that. And then became later a resident at the clay studio, and now makes her home and makes her work in the South Kensington neighborhood of Philadelphia. So Kukuli, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us and for being a juror of this exhibition.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I didn't know I was gonna be the next. This piece that you have here in the screen is the piece that is part of the collection of Clay Studio after my residency. When I came to Philadelphia, I brought 6 pieces made of this series, and I made 60 something more of it. And if you show the other images, people can see that they all are coming from the same mold, press mold. But I changed each of them to deal with a specific issue. Like, for instance, this one is about my father's death. My father died because of heart failure, and Dasha, I very much appreciate your explanation of your work, because I think that our life and our art is completely connected. In my case, I wanted to portray in this piece that I felt the loss, that my world was upside down, and all the drawings that you see in the body are the drawings that I did when I was a kid, and my father noticed my existence thanks to them. And so it was just that he loved so much when I was a kid. I don't remember if I sent you another image of it. Oh, yes, I did. This is Santa Chingada, the perfect little woman. This is a recurrent character in my work, Santa Chingada, which is basically a saint I created because in Latin America, and here too, women are expected, in order to be considered good women, to be capable of sacrificing themselves for others, capable of accepting undeserved pain and mistreatment. Because that's what makes us good, to suffer. And so I thought, well, if that is the case, then I'm gonna make a saint that will be all of those things. It will be somebody willing to give her life, ignoring herself, for her family, for her children, for her husband. It doesn't matter if she doesn't receive anything in return. So as you see, Isi Chapuitu, which is the name of this series, had a lot of different things to talk about. And it is an old series. I made this in 1997, 96 to 2001. And is one of the series that I've been very happy to work, to have the process, to have the possibility of their company for all those years. I think that will be it.
Thank you so much, Kukuli.
Thank you so much, Kukuli. Thanks to you.
And I'd like to, oh, I'm sorry, there was one more picture.
Oh, you know, with this, the good thing about this series is I was able to use several different kinds of clay to experiment and to see the color. So it was fun in so many ways. Okay, I shut up now.
I'll just also share that we're really pleased and honored that Kukuli is going to be one of the lead artists on our inaugural exhibition next year when we open our new building. This show is called Making Place Matter, and we've already started planning for it, and it's going to be working together closely with our new neighborhood and our current community and these wonderful lead artists, Kukuli, along with Ibrahim Saeed and Molly Hatch. So we will be talking more to Kukuli, absolutely, and look forward to a solo lunch and learn with her in the future. Thank you.
Yes.
Sana Musasama is our next juror who I'd like to present her work. Sana is a ceramic and mixed media artist based in New York City. Her artistic practice parallels her work as an educator and commitment to human rights causes, especially the human trafficking of women. Her work has been recognized with numerous awards, including an Anonymous Was a Woman Award in 2002, Joan Mitchell Painters and Sculptors Grant in 2013, and she was a Studio Museum and Harlem Artist in Residence in 1983 and 84. Sana Musasama is an associate adjunct professor at Hunter College. Oh, did you unmute?
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Sana.
Sure. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. The piece that we're looking at is a piece that the story behind it really began over 35 years ago when I traveled around the world to study ceramics. And I, as a woman traveler and a solo traveler, I always connected with women and little girls and peeked into their lives. And as a Western woman, I saw a difference, radical difference, and sometimes that difference was heartbreaking. And I felt responsible as an artist, as a woman, to tell the stories that I see as I travel around the world that focus on the lives of little girls. So this piece that you're looking at is about female excision, a ritualistic surgery that's over 10,000 years old, that's existed in many, 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 many parts of the world. But for some reason, we only peg Africa as the place that it exists. But I have an Aunt Dot who died 10 years ago, who came to New York from the South, and her first job was working at Creedmoor Hospital for the mentally challenged, and she prepped sick, emotionally ill young women for circumcision. And so those narratives about ritual we don't hear about. And so my work is really about retelling stories that I live and I experience. So you can show some of the images there. This is a new piece. I go back and forth with the series. I started it 30 years ago. When I started them, they were the scale of our faces because I wanted to put the vagina of women up in the face of Western women. And when I teach, I always teach my students that you have to develop an audience as an artist. And my audience for this work were not women who had been excised, but for women who would never be excised, so that they know that somewhere in the world, a girl is going through this procedure. Something very important that I want to stress with this procedure is that it is not a procedure that's done because the little girl or the women are hated. It is a procedure that started off as an idea of protection. It was a prevention for rape. Now, rape should not exist, but it does exist. And so women asked their elders, protect me when you're not here, protect me when you go on the hunt, protect me from other men. And thus began the procedure of circumcision. So it became as a protection thing, but still, either way, a woman's body was violated. So the scale of them now are very, very tiny because since circumcision became a worldwide event and papers knew about it and cultures knew about it, in these cultures where it was secret society and no one knew about it, not even a little girl the morning before her procedure was going to happen, I reduced the scale to tiny ones to talk about the young girls that were now going through the ritual when traditionally they were between 13 and 18. It reduced the age to 5, 4, sometimes 2 and 3 years old. So I reduced the scale. So I go back and forth between that and other issues around little girls. Another important issue I work with is girl soldiers. That's my work. Oh, also, these are some images. I forget about this. Is I've been working with girls in Cambodia for 13 years that were once trapped in brothels against their will. These young ladies now are women, but I met them 13 years ago when they were 15, 17, and 18. A girl that's rescued later in her life, like 10 through, well, more like 15 through 21, in Cambodia cannot sit in a classroom because she's gone beyond the age. I recognize that these girls were the most vulnerable girls in the safe houses. They're rescued at 3, 5, 7. They can put them into school. They can grow up with an education, but older girls cannot. So I developed the apron project for these girls, and I go once a year, take all this fabric. Each girl gets about 40 aprons. I pay them half the price. I come back the next year and pick them up and give the girls another order. They make these incredibly beautiful, beautiful, beautiful aprons, and all of these girls, they're my chosen daughters. They call me Mum. They call themselves survivors. I love them. Thank you.
Thank you, Sana. Some really beautiful photos of you working with these girls, and this such important work to support girls around the world in all these different ways by raising important issues, and also just by, showing them love.
Yeah, well, they loved me first. They protected me in these villages. They guided me. They told me where not to go, what to drink, what not to. So a role switch. These little girls became my mom, and I became their daughter. So I felt compelled to tell their story.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you so much for helping us and being with us today.
You're welcome.
So our last juror that we're going to focus on is Lauren Sandler. Lauren is the assistant professor and program head of ceramics at Tyler School of Art in Philadelphia here. We're so pleased that she's moved back to Philadelphia. Sandler is an artist and educator whose work deconstructs mythologies and investigates narratives of power and perspective. With fragmented forms, allegorical vessels, and mundane assemblages, Sandler amplifies interdependence, highlights stories obfuscated or erased, and implicates our assumptions of normal and worth. With a background in anthropology, Sandler examines the myriad chronicles told by objects and develops work where the visceral and structural meet a shared intersection of body, culture, and history. Sandler exhibits nationally and publishes work and lectures concerning issues of equity in ceramics. She currently serves on the board of the National Council on Education for the Ceramic Arts, NCECA, as director at large. Her MFA in ceramics is from Penn State, and her BFA from Ceramics State University of New York, New Paltz. Thank you, Lauren. And here we have your work.
Jennifer. I think there's a few images there, but I think I'm just, for the sake of time, going to talk about the first two, because it's really my current body of work, and this is the piece that is over at the Clay Studio right now. It's part of a series I call Centuripe series that I've been working on for a couple of years. And this piece is called Weights and Bobbers. And part of the research of this work, I mean, I was here, I think a month or a couple months ago talking about this, but I'll sort of share some of it a bit more now. A lot of the research for this series of work of mine really began through conversations I was having with, or I've been having with students over the years. A lot of discussions around appropriation in ceramics. And so we would talk a lot about what we look at as artists, and considering what we look at as artists, what our work references, how our personal relationships to the objects or the work that we're referencing impacts the content of our work as artists, how certain power dynamics are established dependent on who I am and what I'm looking at. So these conversations really led me to do some research on objects from my own cultural lineage, which is Jewish and Italian. And through that, I came upon these objects from Centuripe, Sicily. I don't have the images of those to share here, but these were laconis, these lidded forms from Centuripe, Sicily, 300 to 200 BC when they were made. And that's an area where my mother's family is from. And so I was really intrigued by these objects, which just led to further research on objects of ancient Rome. And as I was doing that, I was thinking about how much of the objects of that time period really amplified this idea of a multiculturalism of the era, rather than this essentially refuting this lie that classical antiquity was a homogeneous time and place. And so just like this idea of like the white marbles figurative statues that we all have seen, in the history books and museums, and how when those statues were depicted in the time of the Renaissance, they were presented as these monochromatic white figures, as many of us have seen, but we now know that they were actually polychromatic and they were embellished with color and gilding and inlay and, and so much. And so this idea of this constructed mythology of those sculptures as white was something that was really established in the 18th and 19th centuries as a way to essentially equate this racial whiteness with beauty. So this series is exploring really critiquing this Eurocentric art history that is founded on these narratives that really misappropriate earlier histories. And so I'm sort of exploring this idea of cultural content in historic context through these myths, and stories, both personal and historic. So this piece, century-based series, Weights and Bobbers, these objects are covered with different objects to kind of tell a different story or narrative on them. And I think of them as really embodying different myths and realities, both about domesticity and ritual, trade and commodity and function and adornment. And on this, we have the objects on this piece are hooks and weights and bobbers and rope. It represents a sort of sea, movement of goods, movement of people, thinking about depictions of migrations and diasporas. And then you can go to the next slide, the next image there, which is another one of the century-based series called Oil Lamps. I think is the name of this one is Oil Lamps. And on this is oil lamps, I was looking at ancient Jewish oil lamps, and all of the objects on this piece are the images that were inscribed on or etched onto those oil lamps. Pomegranate seeds, wheat, keys, combs, and so on. It's just sort of exploring some of that imagery. And then you can I know there's a few images there, you can kind of just go through them. These are some different series that I won't go into. This is called What If the Dandelion Told the Story of Tea? But I think I'll save that for maybe another time, from a series called Bifurcated. And then I think there might be one or two more images. Forgetting my titles. Cornucopia from a series of mine called Overlooked. And then maybe there's one more. This is called Bathroom Vanity from a series of mine called Recollections, which is where I really began working with more representational objects and thinking about the still life and the representation of objects. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Lauren. And I was glad that you went through them all and shared all these, because it really does tell the story of how you value objects as a narrative storytelling function, and that although these works are so different, they also have a through line that's very strong and tells the story of kind of abundance and your obvious understanding of putting these things together to present in a way that makes them so strong. So anyway, I love to see this progression. I think it tells an important story about your work.
I think I have it presented as this is the earliest work, and I think it's working up to the Century Bay.
Right, it seems that we just progressed back through your career in a way to say okay, here are these prosaic objects from your bathroom, and then it's the same spirit that you're talking about these incredibly important ancient historical worldview issues with your current work.
And I do think just that a lot of the work is very much influenced from the study of anthropology, my first undergraduate degree, and the role that objects play in our lives, the narratives, means of objects as ways of storytelling.
Well, and I think that this is a great segue into our short conversation that we'll have now about the jurying process. So we're saving the Leroy for last. And we're going to talk just for about 7 or so minutes now with our jurors about the actual process. And I think this idea that there is an importance placed on materiality, there is an importance placed on thinking about how objects tell stories about our lives that may play into how each of you, I'll ask each of you how you approached jurying when you're faced with 400 objects. You know, is there, and I did, we have talked, I warned you that I was going to ask this question, although I know it's a hard one even with a warning, but I'm going to unmute Kukuli if I can. Nope, it's not working. Thanks, Sana. So if maybe Kukuli or Sana wants to start out with an answer to this very difficult question of what do you look for when you're jurying an exhibition?
Sana, well, I am interested in a relationship of the artwork with the artist's background. I come from Peru, where for many decades the artwork produced by the elite, by the the one that was considered fine arts, was always reminiscent of European or American art, and it always seemed to me that people were just following somebody else's lead. And I am interested in seeing when an artist used elements of their own cultural identity, which is very broad. Where you were born, what was your social class, your genre, so on, so on, so on. And it speaks from who they are. And many times you see artwork that is very similar to another, and I feel like when you cannot see that specificity of the artist is because the artist is still looking for their own voice. At least that is my approach. I don't know, Sana.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you 100% on that, Kukuli, and that's something that when we're teaching, we're trying to make students retreat into who they are and speak about that. And it's hard because it's not taught that, we don't teach them that. And so it's really hard to make them have confidence that their personal story is an important story and that it is their wellspring to jump from. So I am looking for that, but also in just looking at art in general, I'm looking for work that I'm charged and moved, that makes me laugh, that makes me cry, that makes me ponder about the human condition, that poses questions that I can't ask and provokes me to want to study and to learn more and to travel more. I love utility, I celebrate it, and I also am intrigued by skill. So there are a lot of things when I'm looking at art, and there's different things when I'm teaching art.
Well, that's great. Lauren?
Yeah, I think I would just kind of, along I think what Sana was saying, I think about just a sense of curiosity. I think when I'm looking at work, and with this, like, we're looking at, I don't know how many, there was like hundreds of images, or I don't know, I'm not sure how many there were, but there were a lot. What's that?
400.
400 images, okay. But to me, there's something really exciting about like that abundance of objects and things to look at. And it's interesting where you begin and then where you are at the end of the process. And it also makes me kind of go back to the beginning and like, I might look at that differently now after I've gone through this process of looking at all of these images. But I think about curiosity. I'm thinking about, when I'm looking at something that pulls me in to kind of just want to explore further, to want to look at more. And that can be, it can be visual, it can be a formal thing, it can be a conceptual choice, it can be a reference to the work that I'm picking up on. And that just makes me want to kind of stay with it longer. So I think there's something that is, it starts at least initially very, I think for me, intuitive. And then kind of spending more time with the work. But it was also really interesting, the process with us doing it together. For me, it was a real treat with Sana and Kukuli, two artists that I, admire, and just the conversation and the comments. And so hearing, I might have a certain response to something, and then hearing something one of them said, it encouraged me to kind of come at it from like a different side.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it presented a different angle or perspective. And to me, that's something that's so kind of opening and freeing, you know, that process and the way that we did that I really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. There's sort of a visceral first response to things, which you have to trust, but then it's really gratifying to listen to somebody else's thought and maybe come back to that same thing with a different perspective. And I think I am now pretty strongly in the camp that you need to have a 3-person jury.
Mm-hmm.
When you're approaching, we need to have many voices, and Lauren was you know, instrumental in making sure that happened, and inviting Kukuli and Sana. And also just we all have different experiences, and when we're looking at an artist who's had yet another experience, it's so important to kind of have that conversation. I also really value the time that we spend together, because I think, especially when you, again, I'm going to keep saying 400 objects, go through all of these together, you start to think like, okay, Kukuli's going to say this, and Sana and Lauren will say this, and then what's fun is when somebody says maybe the opposite of what you think, like you're like, oh yeah, we're in the group, this is what we're going to say, and then it changes, and you kind of are influencing each other and getting to know each other in a totally different way, which was really great for me. So
and it's important, if I may say, it's important to have different voices in a jury situation, because we all come from different perspectives. I come from painting, and for me, for instance, the expertise in working with clay is not something that is important. I look at ceramic art in the same way that I look to photography or painting. For me, everything, it has the same possibilities, the same power. And what I am interested is in the freedom that the artist gives herself or himself, and to feel that freedom in their work. I'm probably not a good example of technique. I just learn by making, and I know exactly as much as I make. I don't know more than that. I don't know anything about faces. My knowledge is very limited, and I'm fine with that, because I think that when I need to know something, I will get to learn it. And freedom is that. Freedom is the possibility of not being limited by your knowledge, but to be able to go beyond. And if you don't learn it, somebody who knows will tell you, teach you, or work with you. You know, I don't know to make molds, and I made a series of 74 pieces. A friend of mine, I have to say, a friend of mine made the mold for me, but I made a 74 pieces. I would have never been able to do it if somebody didn't help me. So I think that, you know, your limitations are not real limitations for your artwork.
Brilliant.
And I like that. I like to see that in the work of others.
Mm-hmm.
Who cares if you don't know how to do it? You will learn in the moment.
Exactly.
Maybe that's why I don't teach.
No, that would make you a good teacher, Kukuli.
Exactly. And I was just thinking, Kukuli, I wish you could tell my online teacher that.
you'll learn it in the moment.
That I'll get this shit down the road. Don't hassle me now. Seriously.
We'll all see, we're all figuring it out. It's gonna be fine. Anyone have last comments about that? We'll switch to back to lots of really good questions from the audience after we hear from Leroy, but does anyone want to just tie that up in a bow, or we're good? Okay.
Well, I just love these two words, Lauren with curiosity and Kukuli with freedom. I love those two words, and they're on the top of my page for the day. Every day I give myself 5 words, so those words are on the top. And aren't they the words of now? Aren't freedom, curiosity, to be? They're so powerful. Thank you, you guys.
I'm writing them down too. And I think that those might be the names of the Mars rovers, but I could be wrong. Because now we're going to Mars, even though we can't figure out Earth. Anyway,
Exactly.
Leroy, are you ready? I'm gonna introduce you. Okay, Leroy Johnson grew up in the Eastwick community of Southwest Philadelphia. Reflective of life in the inner city, his work takes the form of painting, collage, clay, and found objects. He is exhibited widely at Philadelphia's Magic Gardens, Tirza Yalon Colton Ceramics Gallery, University of Pennsylvania, Museum of Contemporary Crafts, Tiger Strikes the Asteroid, as well as numerous other venues. He received grants from the Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation, the Independence Foundation, and the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts. He's a 2014 Pew Fellow and was chosen as the director's highlight in the Let's Connect competition. He has participated in many community-based arts projects, including Isla Ife, Taller Puertorriqueño, and St. Francis Academy. He is the inaugural resident artist at the Art Barn in Amaranth, Virginia, in the recent Mural Art Studio, artist in residence at the Barnes Museum, and the current Peter Benoliel Fellow at the Center for Emerging Visual Artists. And he also was a resident artist at the Clay Studio.
He's done it all.
You're gonna have to add that in next time, Leroy. Okay, can you unmute yourself, or do you want me to do it for you?
I've learned that much.
You got it. Okay, excellent.
On.
I'm gonna bring up your image
All right.
here, and this is Leroy's work that is in the exhibition right now.
Yes, just that one piece, yeah.
Although I do have your other, oops, I don't know why. Oh, I know what happened. Share the screen. There we go. Okay.
All right. First of all, I'm so proud and happy to be part of this and to know all those incredible jurors. I'm happier about that than anything. They are incredible, terrific people. Honest to goodness, as artists. I really dig them. This is my piece. I'm just going to really jump into it. I have notes here. I have some things I have to write for another publication. And I've always been about recycling, environment, repurpose, justice, indigenous, black and brown people, freedom, justice, and equality for everybody. I got started in arts like that. Clay, I was very fortunate. I got started at Fleischer's Art Memorial. The people I encountered during my journey and knew with Fran Murray, I knew Paulus Berenson, Franz Willenhain, Karen Carnes, MC Richards, Armand Mednick and Glass, whatnot. I hung and knew those people and spoke with them. They helped me, encouraged me a great deal. At any rate, I like grit and I like original process. And I agree with the other jurors and whatnot. I really am not interested in the academy. Of course, with me, ceramics, David Drake, known as a slave, Dave the Slave, the potter, and things like that. I've done research on clay and the face jugs. So I'm showing some. These are some of my earliest work. That middle piece is probably. These are the two on the left are definitely pre-Clay Studio. Back, I spent 10 years on my own, at least developing my own glazes, own formulas and whatnot. A lot of my glazes and whatnot have street grid in them. I formulated my own glazes because I didn't know you couldn't, didn't care that you couldn't. Of course, African, Asian, Noah, Greek, and all those were all things that influenced me. Knox sculpture, Nigerian clay, pieces like that. For me, power, go to the next one as well, please. Power objects, and I want to show a little detail on this because I also had a chance to talk briefly and see Peter Volkos, and I was big on sort of stacked pieces, except when I was younger, I was still more of a, let's say, an Afrophile, or I don't know. During the movement in the 60s, that we're really getting back to. I tell people what happened with me is during after Reconstruction, about the 1870s, many of the enslaved people moved to Kansas, Oklahoma, to the Midwest, whatnot, you know? And those people were were forward thinking. It was before Jim Crow, so they hadn't been beaten down yet. There was still a notion of freedom of being an American. Their children are the ones who came to Kansas and to Harlem and whatnot, and brought jazz and literature and the Richard Wrights and the Ralph Ellisons and people like that there, you know, and those people are the ones who influenced me in painting, in clay, and in art in general, and in attention to things like that. The other people that influenced me were people like James Son Thomas. These are all African-American vernacular artists. One of the issues I have when it comes, the next one, please, is the fact that people are not aware of the history. They haven't read. I've read all the books that the so-called educated people have read. Melville, Nietzsche, you know, Mark, everybody, but they have not read most of them. Ralph Ellison, Richard Wright. You know, they don't know too much about any of the great African-American writers. Maybe a few now, more recently, thanks to Oprah Winfrey. But basically not really, they don't have the background and the richness of background in order to quite see things my way. So my pieces, which are clay and mixed media, are like extensions of my paintings, really. My sculptures are folded up paintings, and my paintings are stretched out sculptures of the same themes and whatever. So I show you this. This is one side of sculpture or whatnot, where I include time and neighborhoods and areas that most people are never going to see. Show me the next one, please. And on the other side, see, I work because I've attended repurposing, recycling conventions and whatnot. I've been to Canada, to the West Coast, Seattle, and other places for conventions. Lots of them involved with feminism and whatever. I've met Angela Davis, Medea Benjamin, and any number of people. So anyway, a lot of my work has always been involved with the city's urban environment, as well as with the conditions of people, mainly females, because of it. I did a lot of social work at one time as well. I can't go into letting you know all the influences or things that happened to me in my life and whatnot. But when I left the clay studio, as Kukuli, some of them know, I was sick, and that's why I started painting again. And right now, as Lauren knows, next one, please. I'm collecting clay samples and quartz samples from around the city and doing research on that. Coronavirus stopped that. This piece here, a lot of my clay sometimes also is, I consider almost secular. I did this piece when my father died, called A Song from My Father. And so it in part, it's funny because of the Kukuli and what, so when my father was on his deathbed, his feet were sticking, do the next one, please. His feet were sticking out of the blankets and whatnot. I kept on covering them up, you know. He kept on moving around when he was on his last days. And so I just remembered that, and somehow this all came together into this piece. I have a piece I did when my mother passed away, but then I'd start crying if I see it. So we can't show you that one. I get too emotional. But anyway, I'm not gonna tie you up. This is it. Thank you I don't know if I have any more.
No, that was all that you sent me,
Yeah.
Leroy.
Yes. So I'm writing, I have other things I'm going to be talking. I'll hopefully be in touch with you about that, because I have some other engagements where I'm going to expand on what I tried to run through in rapid fashion.
We are
Thanks.
absolutely going to invite you back for more conversation, because you are incredibly important to Philadelphia and to the Clay Studio, and we're just so glad that you're in this exhibition and that you agreed to talk today. Thank you so much, Leroy.
Thank you. Thank everyone for viewing too. Hope I get to see you guys at some point in like the olden days, you know.
In life, that would be nice.
Yeah.
I hope we get to start digging that clay sometime soon, Leroy.
Yes. So yeah, I got some great clay samples and things to show you.
I got some in the studio that I haven't. They're at the school studio. I'll get them to you eventually.
Are we going over to the new site to get some samples from our lot?
I would like to.
We should.
Can we talk about that later?
I live on 16th Street, you know, and they've changed Ridge Avenue. They changed. That's where I got a lot of my clay, just from digging up the stuff here in Philadelphia and other sites. Coronavirus stopped all the construction for a while there.
Yeah.
Didn't get around.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to our wonderful, so many questions from the audience, really good stuff. So I'm just going to start at the beginning, where we had people asking Dasha some questions. Have you ever gotten to look at real lung specimens rather than images?
I have not. That would be amazing if I could do. I mean, well, actually, I did see that show called Human, and it was like all. Do you remember? It was like, yeah, it was all these figures, and they reconstructed like people's lungs, and like there was baby fetuses, and like it was kind of like traveling around the United States for a while.
I never did go see that. I didn't think I could handle it, but
it was really interesting. So yeah, I guess I have seen lungs in real life, but it's been a while.
I would suggest coming to Philadelphia, as you mentioned you haven't done, and going to the Mutter Museum, which is the School of College of Physicians, and it's a historical museum with lots of interesting specimens. It's also not for the faint of heart.
Philadelphia air, you sure will. Something will happen to your lungs.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
Yeah. No, I really need it. That's on my bucket list for sure, is to come to Philly.
Yeah, the Mutter Museum is amazing. And they've been doing some good art partnerships. Kukuli, there are words written on the metal strips. I would love to know what is written on them. Can you please tell us about the different types of clay that you use?
I don't remember what is written. I write in many of my pieces up to now. I have a painting with like hundreds of ribbons with writing. I don't know why I do that to myself, because it has been painful to paint it. But I write a lot in my pieces. I just, when I was in New York, I didn't know there was a world of clay, and I got a fellowship at the clay studio. And when I came, I realized that there was, all this clay community that I had no reference. And then everybody was talking to me about how many different clays I could use, and I began trying them out. It was not a real research. I just wanted to see the colors and to fire them. I do only electric firing, and I only work low fire. I always go for the easiest. And only one fire. I'm awful, but. It just at that time there were several types of clay. Now I don't see them. We have only a standard. We have mostly a standard, and then some Miller. But before, each of them had such a variety of colors. I'm talking about 22 years ago. I don't know what happened. Maybe in other parts of the country, but that was the reason. And this is my daughter. That was the reason of using clay, to see how the color was, how it works. I was gonna make so many pieces with one mold, so I better have fun all the way through.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. And then someone asks if they've ever been seen all together, and you did have a wonderful show at the American Museum of Ceramic Art. Was that this body of work, or?
There were a few of them, but that was not that body of work. We was at a color center, at a color that I had 60 of the pieces together. And in Ireland at the Eva Plus, which was the Irish Biennial. Now it's called Irish Biennial, I think. I had 22. I think that 60 and 22 are the most that they have been presented together, if I don't recall wrongly.
And is there a book? Am I remembering that there's a book, or no?
There is a brochure with some writing in it about Isi Chapuito. It was that time, when we were taking slides, and
yeah.
I mean, I don't even have digital images of them. God, I feel old.
We've gone from slides to talking to each other through the internet in what, like 25 years. It's kind of crazy. Okay, thank you. Sana, someone says thank you, powerful work. That was Danielle. She's also one of the juried artists. Sana, do you work alone with these chosen girls, or in a group? And can you provide us with a link to your organization, perhaps if people wanted to donate to the work that you're doing?
Yes, it's called Together One Heart, and it has a satellite organization here in California, and it's through them that you can donate. And the other way that you can donate is I go to Cambodia every December 15th. And when I go, that's when I ask people to send me a donation, because I take it and hand it directly to Somali mom. When it's in the satellite here, they're paying multiple bills. But when I go, and I go with 200 or 300, we'll buy a refrigerator. We'll send a girl to the doctor. We'll get somebody's shoes. We'll get a lawyer. So when I go that time of the year, I also take the money, and everyone who gives to me, I send them, come back with a receipt so that they know that their money went directly to a Somali. And a thank you note usually from the girls. So they can do either or. Unfortunately, I'm not going this December. I'm scared of a 21-hour flight, and that if somebody's sick on the flight and we're all breathing the same air, that I would get sick. So unfortunately I'm not going, but I talked to the girls last night, and I'm going to test it by sending a box of fabric and seeing if it gets there. Because they live out in the country and the mail gets stolen. If that box gets there, I'll send 4 more, and then I'll send money Western Union, and the girls will work this year without me. So we're going to test 1 box, but I'm not going to go in December this year. I'm not.
Well, I'm glad you're going to stay safe, but if there's a way, so when you have a link and you start to raise money for sending that fabric and the money to them, if you let me know, I can tell people that information.
Okay, great, thank you. And I do work alone with the girls, but I have, over the last 13 years, have had friends that have joined me. They've come over. I go 6 weeks, but I've had friends that come for a week, 2 weeks, and take them right into the shelters, and we work with the girls. The only requirement is that everybody must have a police report so that we know that they are not a pedophile. It's clear across the board. Even me, every year I go to the police department and it's what the law is to protect the girls. Yeah. But yes, anyone can join me. It's not easy travel, and it's not three-star hotels. So just beware. Yeah. My niece went with me one time, and she said, "This is not a vacation." I said, "Well, we're on vacation."
Oh boy. Well, I'm sure it was memorable for her.
It sure was.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Sana.
You're welcome.
And Rosa asks, can each of the artists speak about the complexities of photographing a 3D object and how a photograph doesn't capture angles? And I would like to add to that, just to maybe even talk about the importance of lighting and sending a good photograph, because, and I can answer a bit and then sort of pass it off to anyone else who wants to answer, but when you're looking at 400 objects and you're waiting for one to grab your attention, you really need it to have a beautiful photograph. And it may just, you can do it on your own. Think about natural light. Think about taking a few, especially, you can even take them on your cell phone these days, but you just have to keep experimenting and show it to somebody else before you send it in. Make sure that it's going to do the best for the work, because you really just are seeing so many different images coming at you. It's incredibly important. So maybe, I don't know if any of the other jurors want to comment on that.
I agree with you. Certainly natural light, and our phones will do it, but it's just really important to have natural light. Yeah. And I hire someone. I just figure if they went to school to study photography, I'm going to support their skill. And I just hire when I need great, museum shows, you want great images. And if I do them, I have to constantly redo them and touch them up. So I just hire somebody now.
And that's a good point too, that within our community, ask a friend, ask somebody who's got a website that you admire, who's taking their work. If you can maybe join forces, if it's a cost issue, you can ask 2 or 3 other people and then hire the photographer to come and do all of them at once. It might be lower cost. Yeah. You're welcome to email me. I have some connections with really wonderful.
Yanez, she's helping me right now. So. Doing photography. That's who she's here right now. She's filming me doing this. But just mentioning her name, Creative Synergy.
Okay.
I'll make sure she sends something over. You'll see.
Thank you, Leroy. Go ahead and put it in the chat if you want. Or ask her to. That would be great. So the next question is, Lauren, I appreciate seeing the range and change of your work. Thank you. Can you speak to the decision of choosing the jar form, Lauren? Dasha?
Yeah, it's a direct reference to the ancient objects where the series began that I didn't show you. So there are these Lacanus lidded Lacanus pots from century-based Sicily. So they were these lidded containers. Mm-hmm. So that's where this series kind of began, and that's why they're all vessels. They're all lidded to sort of maintain that original reference. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. What are the challenges of selecting pieces during the time of COVID? That's a big question. Jurors?
Selecting pieces for the show? I mean, I don't know if it will, for us, the selection process really wouldn't be different. We would just be looking at images.
Right. But maybe in the same room.
Yes, like we wouldn't have been doing it over. That's true.
Yeah. What's next?
Yeah, but always the first steps is like I was part of jury thing for Skull Higgins, and we did it through the internet, the first 2 parts, and the very last is that we went to New York. But it was interesting to be in the same place, but as we did it, we all were talking to each other. So I don't know if it seems to me that it worked so well. I might be wrong, because we were looking at the images and then we were talking to each other.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. In some ways, it might even have been a little easier, because rather than having to find a time where we could all travel to the same place to be together, and Sana's in New York, so in a way, it's made it so that we're more flexible. We don't have to, Kukuli is there with her daughter, and I have my son, and if I need to be home because we're caring for them, at least, they can come and say hi on the Zoom like Vita did, and then, so I'm trying to find the silver linings.
Yes.
Hi again, Vita. Did you hear your name? Okay, let's see. The next question is, Kimberly, and is it Kimberly Camp, who's also one of the invited artists in the exhibition. I love that. Could the jurors comment on the importance of collecting, especially now when artificiality and virtual reality are so dominant? So maybe Kimberly, you can unmute yourself and tell us, but I think, do you mean like actually getting the piece and having it in your own home? Or maybe she's not with us.
No, she just said yes.
Oh, she said yes. Okay, I don't have my thing on the right. Yeah, anybody want to talk about that? I just say I agree, but she's laughing.
Collecting.
But I'm sorry, I didn't understand very well the question. If
I think she just wants
between virtual and actually having an artwork.
Yeah, that the benefit of being able to see the thing in person, and collecting, I think she means like, buying the piece and actually bringing it to your house and living with an object rather than just a photograph. As you are all artists, you probably think that's important too.
Yeah.
As do I.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would, I think that's a great challenge that we're facing, as visual people, as artists, makers of objects right now. I mean, I think I'm really starting to experience the challenge of that more as an educator right now of artists, and how are we going to engage in conversations about our work when this is the space in which we're experiencing each other's work, and it is made to be experienced in person. And I don't have answers for that. I think these are just the realities of the challenges that we're facing now, both in experiencing work, in whether it's in examples of this, of juring work, I mean, and exhibitions happening on an online format. I mean, that's not a new thing, but it has become a dominant thing now, or the pervasive thing. And I think there is something that is certainly lost in that. I guess it depends on the kinds of objects perhaps that we're making, but I don't have, I think that's something that we're all kind of, the reality of a lot of our experiences right now. I don't really have an answer for that, but a recognition of that challenge.
Yeah. Just an agreement. And going to the clay studio in the gallery and standing there, as I've had the privilege to do, it's a reminder of how much we love objects and how much it's important to be in the same space as them. But again, we wouldn't have been able to show all these works in person otherwise. So there's trying to take the best of both. It's hard. Danielle says, I love that you all were a team of jurors and very thrilled my work spoke to some of you. Gratefully, Danielle Callahan. Thank you, Danielle. Nancy is saying that she'd like this to be replayed on the Clay Studio website, which it will be in a few days. We'll have this recording, which I actually remembered to hit record, so that's great. And Stephanie's laughing specifically. Sana and Kukuli, you both create inspiring work that has drawn a lot from emotion, trauma, and pain. During this pandemic, have you been able to find inspiration through the experience to create? And that's from Stephanie.
Oh, unfortunately, I have not been able to work at all during the pandemic, and lots of realizations have come to mind. I realized that when I go into the studio, I'm talking to the world, my world, and it didn't exist in the studio during the pandemic, and particularly the first couple of weeks. And I was very, very hurt by the marchings and things that were going on, and I wasn't able to work, and I haven't been able to work since. I'm sorry. I'm not able to work if I don't have a community or audience, and if the world is crying, I feel like I can't shape my materials. So it's been very hurtful for me, very hurtful. I haven't created at all. I haven't lost my purpose for it, but I can't go in there and work now. I will, but I can't now. I'm sorry.
No, I think
You will. It's a matter of time, and it has been hard for many people. I'm one of the lucky, I guess, that have been able to work in the studio, and but I understand perfectly how you feel. I've been talking to different friends who are artists, and some of them have been able to make a body of work, to be able to isolate themselves from what is happening around us. And I have done pieces of a series that actually is a series that I'm gonna be showing at the Clay Studio in next year. And it's a series titled A Mi Vida, to my life, or to my vida. My daughter's name is Vida. Mm-hmm. And she always comes when she hears her name. And,
that brings a smile back.
Yes, it brings a smile back.
And yeah, the people are children that I carry in my arms with her face. Mm-hmm. And the ones that I did during the pandemia, and I'm making during the pandemia, all of them have masks. Because there's no other thing that we can do. And you know, I have this little girl with me every day. It's you have to go on. Yeah.
You're lucky, Kukuli.
I just wanted to say.
Oh, Stephanie, we're having trouble hearing you. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Oh, that's better. Yeah.
Okay. No, I just wanted to say that I wanted to send love to Sana and Kukuli and to Leroy. They were both artists who were really inspiring to me and who I met in my my early 20s. And I'm just really inspired by all three of your works. And as an artist of color, it was really important for me to have role models of color because there aren't very many of us. And it was just very impactful to hear you guys talk today. And this is sort of like all come full circle, because this is like almost 20 years later that I'm getting to hear you guys talk again. So it's been really great to see you guys.
No,
Stephanie was at the clay studio early. Bless her heart.
We'll hear those stories someday, right? Thank you. I'm so glad you joined us today, Stephanie. And Stephanie's did a lunch and learn with us. For those of you who didn't get to hear that, it is on the website, so you can go back and listen. We have someone named Trisha who says, "Hi, Sana, love to you from my mama's backyard."
What's that?
Someone says, "Love to you from my mama's backyard." Oh, I think it's Trisha Kiner. She's one of the other artists in the show, and she's sitting in her. There she is. She's just sending you love, I think, because you needed a hug. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
And Raymond is responding to Leroy talking about Paulus Berenson. And Danielle says, "Mr. Johnson, you're not needing to know rules is what makes your work so compelling. And I love the tar type grit feeling. Reminds me of playing barefoot as a kid and popping tar bubbles, among other things." Feeling weird pieces. And Robin says, "Mr. Johnson is the man." We know that. "Mr. Johnson, seems like you make pieces of art as your grieving process for your dear loved ones. What has been the reaction of your family members to these pieces about other family members?"
I'm a personal person. A lot of the stuff I do is for me anyway. I have one in a few people in my family. One of them is a great nephew of mine who shows a great deal of artistic promise. But I really don't share my work too much with the family. They see things sometimes, but I'm in my studio every day. You know, I mean, I'm selfish. I'm in here working and whatnot. I really don't share unless there's a show or a reason. So, and we're Philadelphians, and Philadelphians don't travel. If you live like 6 blocks away,
Stay in your neighborhood.
Ain't too far away to come to Center City. Whoa, come on. So my work is appreciated, but from a distance. I don't really get involved with them. I've always been that nerd, you know, the one who's by himself on his own doing his whatever.
Thank you, Leroy. George says, "Thank you all. All of the presenters were so interesting, and I find all of this work so fascinating. Leroy, always a pleasure to hear what you have to say. So glad I got a chance to see more work and hear all you had to say about it." Thanks, George.
Incredible.
And then Rosa posted Sana's Together One Heart, so if anyone wants to see in the chat. And Lisa is sharing her photographer for anyone who's interested, and there's some information in the chat. Jim Greep, Pow, Hannah Productions. Rick asks, "How do we make exhibition entries focused on the clay work and not on photographs?" Well, that's an important question. So I think maybe we need an entire lunch and learn for that one.
Yeah.
Danielle says, "Thank you for all your insights on your work and what you look for in jurying. I'm hearing it as I stare at the Angela Davis quote I just have pasted on the computer. When you asked what teaching is to her, unleash imagination."
Nice.
And Nadia says, "Sana, thank you for sharing this part of your experience. It is difficult and generous of you to speak of this. I have to believe there will be a time that we can return to feeling our communities close again." And then Carrie says, "Thank you all so much for providing the programming and keeping us all connected to each other. Looking through these little squares and seeing everyone's face is a beam of the soul. Love to you all, and thank you for sharing." And that's a great feeling that I want to echo and say thank you to everyone for being with us today and sharing. And I'll just ask any of my presenters, Dasha, any, Kukuli, Lauren, Leroy, Sana, any final words that you want to share?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, me?
Well, thank you to everybody and to the Clay Studio. And I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, I interrupted you. Mr. Johnson and I.
That's not new. That is
We
true.
like 2 years. He was one of the friendly faces that I saw. The first friendly face that I saw when I came, and I love him very much because he's a little bit like my father, which is not a compliment, but but he's great. Leroy Johnson is one of my favorite artists, and Philadelphia to me is him.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. That's wonderful.
We love you, Leroy. No matter what.
One last thing. Someone made this mask. It's from photographs of one of my paintings.
Oh,
So it's an ornamental mask. I'm really never going to wear it again. I'm just did to show you what. Anyway, I never really did talk about the piece that you had on display. So I only say that with a lot of bottle tops and a lot of industrial things like that, because that's all harkens to the past and a world that we don't have anymore in a lot of ways. Anyway, thank you. Like I said, I love you guys. You're some of the best artists I know, bar none. You know, I agree. I don't have any distinctions about painting or clay or anything like that. I've got to take this.
okay.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have
Thank
a great
you.
day. We'll see you next week. We're going to be talking about, we're having a town hall to tell everybody all about our new building. So if you want to see the floor plans and hear all about that, Jennifer Martin's going to be presenting on the new building next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. We really appreciate you participating.
Yeah.
I'm so happy.
Thank you all.
Bye, Kukuli.
I talk to you.
All right. Very good.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
How do you get out of it?